In the beginning of the story, we can see our protagonist looking at his adventure team from the bottom of a trap he had fallen into. There were also some needles at the bottom which seems to have pierced through his body. "Dawn! Dawn!" His teammates were calling out to him from to the top of the hole, but they themselves could not stay there for much longer because a monster was after them. "Sung-woo! We have no time to stay here any longer," a guy said to their team leader. Sung-woo, prioritizing his alive teammates rather than the one with half his leg in grave, ran away. All while this was happening, a bunny in a suit and a magician hat was taking glee in all this. You know the 7th trap is amazing. Is there another trap on the bottom too?" After saying this, he went away. The protagonist was groaning because of the needle in his stomach. After, with a few effort and pain, he removed the needle that was stuck in his chest. "Arg! Damn!" The protagonist thinks about his severe condition and remembers how it all started. It all happened a few months ago, when he was enjoying his usual life and he was suddenly transported to an unknown place. There were also several other people there with him, just as confused about their situation as he was. Suddenly, a little white weird bunny comes in view and talk about the place everyone was in. It was called Dungeon and it was a game and he was their guide. Everyone was confused upon hearing this information. Suddenly a guy who could not bother anymore with all this and had enough, grabbed the rabbit with his collar and yelled at him to send him back as he was getting late. Suddenly, the air around the rabbit changed. The protagonist felt the change in air around the guide and tried to warn the guide, but before he could do anything the guy's head was no longer there. Seeing this, everyone started panicking and running here and there, but the protagonist didn't move from there, instead kneeled down, not because he was not afraid of what happened before him, but because the shock was too much. The guide then gave everyone a weapon and explained that they are to survive in this game, which was actually hell. Deadly traps, dangerous monsters, everyone thing in the dungeon was dangerous and was reducing the number of people very quickly. We are then switched to a scene where we see Dawn getting thrashed and his meat stolen because he did not have a useful skill and needed the protection of others. Skills are the powers that manifest in people. They can be used for combat, healing, or other things. Dawn had a skill that was named Purification. It does not help in combat nor does it help in other things, as all it does is clean dirty things. Thus the reason for the prejudice against him. Just in time, Sung-woo comes and defends Dawn and help him. He talks about the raid they have to do tomorrow and says that he should go to sleep and rest. The scene switches to them running from some monsters, but it was not easy as there were many traps in their way. Dawn was in the last as he did not have as much stamina as others and was starting to get tired and was about to fall down, but life had something worse in for him as he fell down in a trap, a deadly one at that. The guide who was observing them running talks about the trap which Dawn fell into. It is a quite special as it has 0% chance of surviving. Sung-woo, not being able to help Dawn, leaves him and keeps running while apologizing to him in his mind. While the MC was pretty hopeless and still in the hole, waiting for death to come to him, Sung-woo had already defeated the boss with his teammates. After defeating the boss, Sung-woo asks the guide to send all of them back to their homes since they had defeated the boss, but the guide thought otherwise. He tells everyone how all of this was just the start, a tutorial for them. The real thing had yet to start. Everyone was very anguished because of this and were too tired to continue any longer. Luckily for them, the guide rewarded them with a healing which healed all of them. The reward had also regrown his lost hand. Because of the guide's reward, it also healed all of Dawn's injuries and he was back in shape. Seeing all this, Dawn was very surprised, But when he heard the guide talking about the next stage, he realizes that he does not need to be stuck in the hole any longer and calls for them. Unfortunately for him, he was ignored and all his hope had hit rock bottom again, but then suddenly a panel opens in front of his eyes, with the words "Dungeon Reset." Dawn then remembers the guide talking about how there will be other participants and understood that all of the dungeon will reset. While the MC was thinking about this, the whole dungeon and traps had reset, and the entrance of the trap was blocked again. He picks up a rock and breaks the ceiling of the trap. But he did not have a rope or anything to climb, and if he were to climb by hands, he thought the same thing as before will repeat. Just then the guide comes in and is confused about Dawn's circumstances. Seeing the guide, Dawn became happy as he thought that now he will be teleported with his friends to the next stage, but the guide spills cold water on his hope that had renewed once again. He explains that it's not so simple as that, as the dungeon thinks that Dawn is deceased. Dawn asks the guide if he will be sent back to his world since the dungeon consider him dead, even though he is still alive and well, but the guide tells Dawn that he should just give up on his dream and die. He is an error that is meant to be buried. After saying that, the guide leaves Dawn alone in the hole without even noticing the strange look on Dawn's face. Since Dawn was the only one with the purification skill, only he could detoxify the poison monster meat, which means that he had enough amount in his inventory to survive for a few days. He was ready to see all this through and prove the guide, the people that called him useless and everyone wrong. After the guide leaves Dawn to die, Dawn eats until his stomach is full, as he could not do that with others with him before. After having his stomach full, he starts using the calories gained by thinking of a way to leave from there. After some time of brainstorming, he comes up with a great idea of digging his way out from there. It would be hard and tiring, but it was the only safe way at the moment to get out of there. After an unknown time of digging, we see that Dawn has dug up quite the tunnel with just his hands. Due to digging, his hands have become sore. But that was not his current problem. The sand he dug out was in the tunnel, and he feared he might be buried alive if he doesn't do something about it. He thinks about it for some time and tries using his inventory to store all the sand. Surprisingly, it works out and he stuffs all the sand he dug out in it and continues digging. When Dawn stops to see the amount of sand he collected, which was in hundreds, a panel opens in front of Dawn, surprising him as he did not expect something like this. The panel was notifying about him gaining a new skill which is called Lord of Sands. He laments about it not being a combat skill, as he also wanted some combat skills like Sung Woo. While thinking of Sung Woo, he remembers about the time he spent with him and gets sad from it. Not wanting to think about sad things anymore, he tries to test out his new skill, which was the ability to manipulate sand and mold it to anything into his liking. While Dawn was trying out his new skill, there was someone standing at the entrance of the hole he started dug out. It was the killer bunny, meaning the guide. He was surprised by the tenacity of Dawn to survive and goes to see how he is doing. He is surprised by the very long tunnel Dawn dug, but is even more baffled as he sees that the tunnel is getting wider and more refined. When the guide thought nothing could be more strange than this, he sees a torch on the wall. He wonders how a torch even got here. While he's looking around, he sees Donwoo, who looks very carefree and relaxed compared to how he was at the start of the day. The guide asks him what he was doing when he notices the surroundings. It was all furnished with things made of sand. He screamed in confusion at the bizarre things he was seeing. And that is all for today. Please like the video and subscribe for a cookie.